Hello, good evening, everybody, or good morning to those who are joining from America, and hello to the Europeans. Thank you for joining. This is the last Monday Zen and Zazen class this year, and after New Year's, I will be away for 2 times. So the next one will be on January 18th or 19th. 19th. It's the 19th. So third Monday of January, we will meet for the next time. Today, I'm going to talk about Suzuki Shunryu Roshi's Zen Mind, beginner's mind. But as always, before we talk and discuss, let's sit together for 30 minutes. Oops, sorry. Did you hear me? Could you hear me? Yes? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, thank you for joining. I was surprised that you could hear me during the first minute because this Rode microphone, there's the receiver which you connect to the laptop, and there's the microphone. And I had them mixed up, so I had the microphone connected to the laptop and the thing that's supposed to be the receiver here at my neck. But if you could hear me, that's great. I was a little bit surprised. So 2 weeks ago, I talked about Shunryu Suzuki's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and it was the chapter about the breath. And among other things, Suzuki Roshi says the eye is like a swinging door. And I think swinging door means breathing in, breathing out. And the door is swinging, but actually it's an illusion that I breathe. There's no I that's breathing. The I is just like this swinging door that's following the breath. And then he goes on to say that also uh, time and space don't really exist. We construct time and space or ideas like good and bad, you and me. Those are all things that we construct in our minds. But when you return to the here and now, basically, um, there is no past, there's no future, there's only this one moment. And I received a question by email from somebody who's watching from the Midwest. And I think at this time it's very early morning, so he's watching these sessions after I upload them to YouTube. And I want to share part of the email that he sent. He has a question concerning the breath. He writes, I was intrigued by the most recent of these. So he's talking about the last session 2 weeks ago, as it discussed Suzuki's Zen mind, beginner's mind, and specifically his description of breathing. It did leave me feeling curious about something, however, which I wondered if you might be willing to share your thoughts on. Specifically, as I reread Suzuki, the amount of focus he describes as placed on the breath strikes me as somewhat similar to various breath-focused practices such as Vipassana, and perhaps a bit different from Shikantasa practice as described by many other Soto Zen teachers. I suspect that perhaps this is not as much of a discrepancy as it might seem at first glance. And I do, of course, understand that even within Soto, there are likely teachers who take slightly differing views about Zazen practice. But given that you just recently lectured on the topic, I thought perhaps you would be willing to share your thoughts on Suzuki's description of breathing and its relationship to Shikantasa. So that's the question. Mm, the person who is writing the email seems to have the impression that Suzuki is focusing on the breath quite a lot and is reminded to Vipassana practice where I think it's called Anapana, watching, breathing out, breathing in again. And I was a little bit surprised because compared to the preceding chapter about the posture, where Suzuki Roshi talks about the right posture, and he even goes so far as to say, taking the right posture in itself is enlightenment. And he's not making the same claim about breathing. He's not even talking about the right way to breathe. He just says that where the mind is always aware of the breath and the eye is like a swinging door. But actually, most of the chapter with the title Breathing is not about breathing, but more about the illusionariness, the illusion that we call I. So I didn't get the impression that he's really focusing much on the breath. But I'm sure there's also Soto teachers that hardly mention the breath at all. For example, Dogen himself. A couple of years ago, we read the Fukan Zazengi text together, Dogen's manual for Zazen practice. And there, Dogen talks about the physical posture in quite some detail, but about the breath, I think the only thing he says is you should breathe through the nose quietly. Quietly breathe through the nose. That's all he says. So Dogen Zenji also does not explain how you should breathe in the right way. And he also doesn't say that you should focus on the breath. He only says quietly breathe through the nose. And as the person who writes the email says, it also depends on the teacher. So some teachers might not mention the breath at all because what can happen? I think it happens only to a small percentage of practitioners, but to some it happens that just like the centipedes, I think there's an English saying about the centipede, it has no problems moving its 100 or 1,000 legs, but the moment you tell the centipede to do it in the proper way, to focus, then the centipede cannot move its legs anymore. And it happens to some people that the moment you tell them, just follow your breath. When you breathe out, follow your breath when you breathe out, and then when you breathe in again, breathe in again. The moment they try to do that, they're not sure anymore. Am I already at the end of the breathing out? Should I maybe breathe a little bit longer? When should I breathe in again? How deep should I breathe in again? So it does not happen to most of us, but to some people it happens that they start to hyperventilate. And there's an easy way, if that happens to you, an easy way to solve the problem. Don't follow the breath, but for example, put your awareness where your thumbs touch. Just feel how your thumbs touch lightly, or you put your awareness at the top of the skull. Put your awareness somewhere else, and this doesn't happen. So maybe that's also a reason why some teachers don't mention the breath at all. The next chapter is called Control, and there Suzuki Roshi is mentioning breath again. So before I state my own point of view, I would like to read parts of that chapter with you. As always, let me share the text that you can find on the internet. So that chapter starts at the bottom of page 31. To give your sheep or cow a large, spacious meadow is the way to control him. For a German speaker, it's kind of surprising that he says him, because in German we would think of a sheep or a cow, more as something female. Of course, there's male sheep and male cows, but mostly on the farm you find female ones, or at least that's my image, but it's not really super important here. Basically, that's the idea of the chapter. If you want to control, I don't even know if control is the right word here, but you want to take good care of your sheep or of your cows, give them space. And I often use the metaphor of sheep and the shepherd and the sky and the meadow. And I thought I came up with this by myself. I never heard the metaphor like that from anybody else, but I read this book when I was young, and I could could be that it's the influence from Suzuki Roshi that I came up with this metaphor, because what he's saying here is very close to what I mean, that you should become the meadow itself. Suzuki Roshi doesn't talk about the shepherd here, but basically what he's saying is stop being the shepherd. Don't try to be the shepherd. Give space to the animals, give space to the sheep, give space to the cows, become the meadow. So don't control them. The best, the best thing you can do if you want to control the sheep or cows is stop trying to control them. Give them room. And let me talk about something that he says then one page further at the bottom of page 32 and the top of page 33. The same way works for you yourself as well. If you want to obtain perfect calmness in your Zazen, you should not be bothered by the various images you find in your mind. Let them come, let them go. So the sheep and cows, they were an image for these images, thoughts, emotions that we have in our mind. Let them come, let them go. Then they will be under control. But this policy is not so easy. It sounds easy, but it requires some special effort. How to make this kind of effort is the secret of practice. Suppose you are sitting under some extraordinary circumstances. If you try to calm your mind, you will be unable to sit. And if you try not to be disturbed, your effort will not be the right effort. I was surprised that he's talking about right effort, which is one of the Eightfold Path. I think it's point number 5, if I remember correctly, right effort. I would have found it more naturally if he says, if you try not to be disturbed, you will be even more worried that you might get disturbed. But here he says, well, if you try to not be disturbed, it's not the right effort. I think I talked about that last week or maybe 2 weeks ago. How do we deal with all kinds of obstacles like anger or greed or whatever? Just let it be. Don't try to control it. Don't try to work with it. When you're disturbed, just be disturbed. Don't try to control the disturbance. And then he continues. The only effort, after he said, trying not to be disturbed is not the right effort, he continues. The only effort that will help you is to count your breathing. So here he returns to breathing, and he even mentions the practice of counting the breath. Or to concentrate on your inhaling and exhaling. We say concentration, but to concentrate your mind on something is not the true purpose of Zen. The true purpose is to see things as they are, to observe things as they are, and to let everything go as it goes. This is to put everything under control in its widest sense. I don't know how it feels to you, but to me, what he's doing here or what he's saying here, to me, it sounds kind of ambiguous. First, he says, give space to the sheep. Don't control them. But then he says that's easier said than done, so you need some effort. You need effort. But if you try to not be disturbed, that's not the right effort. What can you do? You can count the breath, or you can concentrate on inhaling and exhaling. But then he seems to be a little bit backpedaling again and says, well, actually the goal of Zen practice is not concentration. It's not about concentration, but just let things go as they go. And letting things go as they go sounds different than counting the breath. counting the breath, at least to my ears, is not the same as just letting things go as they go. That's why I have the feeling Suzuki Roshi is a little bit ambiguous here, but I think we can all get the point. For example, I'm using the metaphor of sheep and the meadow as well. And what I say is, well, don't play the shepherd. Then sometimes I use the metaphor before getting to the metaphor of the sky. Sometimes I go directly to the metaphor of the sky and say, just become the sky and see the sheep down there without trying to control them. But sometimes I use a middle step in between and I say, don't worry about the sheep and the sound they make. You might see that in the middle of the meadow, there's a big tree. And when you feel like you have to be the shepherd, just lie down under the tree and see the tree above you and feel like the breeze is blowing through the leaves and hear the sound of the leaves in the wind. And that metaphor, the tree stands for the body. Return to the body, see the body, feel the body, and the wind blowing through the leaves stands for the breath. That's something you can return to. The problem with just giving space to the sheep, or another metaphor that's often used, that's basically the same point. The sky is not obstructed by the clouds. The sky stands for your mind. The clouds stand for all the thoughts and emotion images that come up. You don't have to suppress them, just let them be, let them float. You are the sky, you don't have to disturb by that. And the problem is, most of the time, our mind tends to get, how do you say, swept away by the clouds. Or you start to ride the sheep, you start to ride the cow. And the moment you realize you're far away. So from time to time, when you realize, oh, I was thinking, it's important to return to the here and now. And being aware of the breath is one easy way. Being aware of the physical feelings is another way to do that. And these two, actually, they don't, how do you say, contradict each other, because, I mean, how do we feel the breath? It's a physical feeling. So you can either, if it's easier for you, focus on the breath alone, or you focus on the whole physical, how do you say, landscape with the breath at the center. But it's not about making a kind of maximum effort to always be with the breath and to watch it as mindful as possible, because then you become, how do you say, neurotic again. Like, am I really with the breath? Am I doing it in the right way? Could I maybe do it in a slightly more mindful way? And I think he tries to, how do you say, communicate that with the metaphor of the swinging door. You allow the breath to swing you. And maybe sometimes your mind is, how do you say, off. But the moment you realize you're off, return to this moment. Another thing that I wanted to share you, because it has a connection to this. There's an article, a short chapter by Uchiyama Roshi, which has the title, "To You Who Are Still Dissatisfied with Your Zazen." You can find that at the end of this book, "To You," that I talk about every second week. So last week I talked about this, and next year on January 19th, I return to this book. The last chapter, I highly recommend to all of you who have the book and those who don't have the book. I will later, when I upload this to YouTube, put a link to the website of Antaiji in the video description, and there you find the whole chapter. And the title to you who are still dissatisfied with your Zen is kind of, it addresses all of us who have heard time and again that Zen is good for nothing. But we don't do this because it's good for nothing. We started to practice because we hope it's good for something. We feel it's helping us. But we still haven't got this big Satori yet. And Uchiyama Roshi is kind of quoting those people that are then kind of saying, well, Dogen Zenji, when he went to China, he had this experience of body and mind dropping off. Or he said when he returned to Japan, he realized that his eyes are horizontal and the nose is vertical, and that the big matter of his whole lifetime was resolved. So how could just sitting be enough for us? We also need this experience. And Uchiyama Roshi continues to say that a lot of people don't really understand the meaning of the words of Dogen Zenji or Sawaki Roshi. And Uchiyama Roshi, of course, doesn't want to go so far as to say that Dogen Zenji or Sawaki Roshi don't understand the doubts of the normal practitioner. But Uchiyama Roshi has the feeling that sometimes their words don't really reach deep enough to really solve our doubts. And Uchiyama Roshi says, well, I want to act as a translator. And he says then, at the bottom of page 207, he says, what does this mean in practice to translate the words of Dogen Zenji or Sawaki Roshi? Let's take, for example, the passage from Dogen Zenji's Ehe Koloku. And here he quotes Dogen. I simply, with my master Tendo Nyojo, quietly verified that the eyes are horizontal and the nose is vertical. From now on, I cannot be misled by anyone. I have returned home empty-handed. How would it be, asks Uchiyama Roshi, how would it be to read it like this? Taking this breath at this moment, I verify that I am alive. And Uchiyama Roshi also doesn't talk so much about breathing. For example, there's one book in English, it has the title Opening the Hand of Thought, which is about the way we do Zazen. And he's explaining, well, just like Dogen Zenji, about the physical posture, but I think he doesn't say much about the breath. But that doesn't mean that the breath would not be important. Quite the opposite. Here, Uchiyama Roshi is basically saying, what does enlightenment mean? It means to take this breath in this moment by moment. You take one breath after the other. That's the practice of enlightenment. And then later in the same article, he says, some people begin with the practice of shkantasa. Shkantasa means just sitting, as you probably all know. Some people begin with the practice of shkantasa and then give it up quickly because it does not give them that feeling of fullness or because it bores them. With a feeling of fullness means when you are hungry, you want to eat and then your stomach is full. And we hope for something similar with Zazen. At one point, I want to have my hunger stilled, my problem to be solved. And in a lot of cases, even after a decade or two, you still have this feeling something is missing here. It bores them. They do so because they only understand this awakening a billion times in their heads. Before that, Uchiyama Roshi quoted Dogen Zenji saying that arousing the mind of Bodhi is not something you do once, but it's done 10,000, 100,000, a million, billion times. So Uchiyama Roshi says many of us don't only understand this intellectually. That's why they think, oh no, I have to awaken the mind a billion times. What I need is Satori. If I hurry up and get one big Satori, I can wrap up this billion times business in one single stroke. It is exactly as if we were told as babies, from now on, you will have to breathe your whole life long, this very breath, again and again, every single moment. You will breathe in and breathe out, billions of times. What baby would say, oh no, I've got to find some way to take care of these billion breaths once and for all, with one really big breath. Even if we tried, we would not succeed. So also Uchiyama Roshi, although he's not talking about breath a lot of times, at least in this chapter, for him, well, practice is taking one breath at a time, breathing out, breathing in again, and then breathing out again, breathing in again. And you don't have to, how do you say, be fixated on it. But if the mind is lost in thoughts and you realize, I was in thoughts, where do you return to? Well, the easiest thing is to return to the breath. And sometimes it can help to count, but also you don't have to fix your mind on counting all of the time. But if you feel it helps you, do it. If, on the other hand, you have the feeling that whenever you try to focus on the breath, your breath gets out of order, you start to hyperventilate, then you don't have to focus on the breath. You can just feel the body as a whole. You might focus on the thumbs or whatever helps you. Okay, so much from my side for today. I talked a little bit longer than usual, but we still have a little time for questions if you have any. Any questions? Anything you would like to share? Jan, please.
Okay, thanks. So among all the things you were talking, it seems like for you there is some kind of tips or tricks to, when you do Zazen, like focusing on the respiration, on the breath. But I want to ask you something different on the everyday life. So on the past days you were talking about living in the present, like saying when you wash dishes, just wash dishes. Um, well, at home we have a wash disher, but I do notice that sometimes I can be present during simple and monotonous activities like driving, walking, sometimes even reading. But I find it much harder to be present when the activity isn't repetitive and it takes some mental focus. So, like, for example, when I'm talking to someone, for me, it's like impossible to feel I'm present there, or when I'm solving a problem, or when I'm playing a game that it's very exciting. So the question is for you, being present in these both cases is the same, like washing dishes or versus doing something mentally demanding? And do you have any tips or tricks for staying more focused, more present during these less monotonous activities?
Mm, I can share that experience that it's more difficult when you're, for example, in a conversation or you're playing game, and that's why staying silent is encouraged, especially during the intensive retreats. Um, Playing games is certainly discouraged as at a monastery. Um, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult. So if you can avoid it, being lost in a conversation for too long, of course, I mean, you would also uh, share communication with your friends. There's nothing wrong about that. But if you realize actually that hinders me from being just here in the moment, then limit the time that you do that. Limit the time when you play games, for example, and rather use the time for just being there with your breath, for example, or washing dishes. So there's no tip how you could, yeah, play game with the same attitude that you do Zazen. So you don't have to do Zazen anymore and can play game all day now. And it's Buddhist practice. I don't have any secret tips that would help you with that. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share? Chris, please. Are
I
you
had
growing a
two.
beard there?
Yeah, I haven't shaved
You
in a
almost
while.
look like a sailor. Sailor
Oh,
man.
I yeah, I had two comments, one quick question, two quick comments, one question. Uh, about the breath question you talked about. So
Yeah.
I remember listening to Isho Fujita's Tokyo FM Zen program. I don't remember the details, but I believe he was also talking about the Buddhist text on breathing. I think there's one text you mentioned the name of it, but I don't remember the details. But he's a Zen monk and he also
Mm,
talks about this a little bit. The
mm,
second comment is this theme of doing less in Zen comes up a lot, and I just resonated a lot with it, with the problems sometimes that happened to me in the past, and other people sometimes have, is of having intrusive thoughts.
mm,
And it's very interesting if you try to stop them. In my experience, it has the opposite effect. And
mm,
then
mm,
finally,
mm,
when I just, accept them, you don't really want them to be there, but by accepting them, then they slowly
mm, mm,
fade. So I just wanted to comment
mm,
those two things. And then my question is, that I was thinking about is my experience practicing judo in Japan, is that most of the teachers will let you they want you to kind of customize and find your own way to do the technique.
mm,
There's
mm,
kind of like some principles and things you shouldn't do, but
mm,
each person has to kind of customize it to their own body type
mm,
and their
mm,
own.
mm, mm.
And I feel like maybe this is the way we should find Zazen as well. Do you think Zazen's something that we should kind of find our own way
Mm,
to
mm.
a certain extent?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I mean, just as in martial arts, it's also important to follow your teacher and not kind of arrange it so that it fits your preferences. But I think there's like here he's talking about giving space to the sheep and to the cows, but it's also the other way around. When you go to a session, it's like you're given this white space. You're kind of this one cow that has this white space to roam, and you have to find out what's there, where the water is that you can drink, and where there's shade from the sun. Um, or like the breath I talked about, how deep your breath is, how long the exhalation is, and I talked about this split seconds that maybe is there between before you breathe in again. But finding out about the split second or not without worrying, and when I should when should I breathe in again? there's huge space for exploration. So you have to explore and take responsibility for this exploring. You shouldn't expect somebody to always take you by the hand or give you a manual. That's the way you do it. That's how you breathe. That's how you work with, I don't know, obstacles in your mind. But that's all up for exploration, finding out by yourself and finding your own way, as you said. Okay, any other questions? Last chance this year. If not, thank you for coming and hoping to see you again in 3 weeks, January 19th. Um, in China, New Year's is a little bit later, but in Japan, it's already the year of the horse. I think in China, it only starts in February. But be that as it may, hoping to see you again in 2026. And on January 19th, it's going to be about Sawaki Roshi's To You. And then the week after that, we return to Suzuki Shunyu's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. So thank you once more. Thank you to Xuanzang for hosting us from America today. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Goodbye.